he thought this would be really funny to just make something up.
Ladies, gentlemen, and those with the good sense to do away with the whole notion, I welcome you to the premier audio medium for all your Fazbear entertainment needs. The Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast. Note, FFPS is not responsible for any loss of appetite, disinterest, dismemberment, or other legally classified statuses. So strap in and enjoy.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast. I'm your host with the toast, Rytos, here to talk about Five Nights at Freddy's like we always do. And it's crazy that it's only been a week since the last recording. I feel like it's been several months. So, a bit of a life update before we get into FNAF. I'm tired, but I'm not the one who's in the worst straits, as it were. For those of you who know or watched the last podcast episode, follow the streams. Last week we went on a bit of a mini vacation. I had a work thing, which I won't be talking about, but, you know, maybe you'll see it soon. And part of that was, you know, we were going a couple states away, and as a family, we had never gone on a vacation just our own. You know, we've taken, my wife and our kids, we've gone with, you know, her parents, their family vacation. We've taken them to other family vacations, but we've never gone on just like our family vacation. So our thoughts were like, hey, I'm going states away. Let's take the excuse. We'll just drive down and we will make it a family trip. It'll be the first time we as a family go somewhere together. And the first 24 hours were great. We drove down overnight because we have two young kids. We're like, so traditional wisdom states that you don't want a kid to be in a car seat for more than 2 hours at a time because their blood could pool weird. They won't necessarily get hurt, but it's good for them to get up and move around. Unless they're asleep. Then you can kind of circumvent that. So it's I think an 8-hour car ride. So we're like, okay, let's go, and we'll go for this 8-hour car ride and we'll leave at bedtime so they fall asleep. And, you know, I've got the work thing in the morning the next day, but my wife said, she can drive down, I can sleep in the passenger seat, let's go. So we do that, and, you know, the trip down is fairly uneventful. It went fairly well. They slept, I want to say for the majority of it, they were up the last 2 hours or so, but so was I, because I was very uncomfortable trying to sleep in an upright passenger seat. You know, my thinking was like, oh, I'll lay back the passenger seat, I'll pass the hell out, because I fall asleep really easily when I'm comfortable, especially in cars. So I was like, yeah, if I just lay back, I will fall asleep and it won't be an issue. Not realizing that since the car's packed, the seat was 90 degrees upright. And I was like sleeping like this with a horrible crick in my neck every time I woke up. But, you know, we made it. I didn't have to drive. I'm not complaining, you know. And then we got to the hotel at like 5 a.m. And, you know, we basically took a mini nap. They slept in later, but I only slept for like 3 more hours. Grabbed a Gamer Sups because I brought the cans with me. I knew I'd be tired. Left to go do my work thing at like 8:30, 9 o'clock. That was all pretty fine. Work thing ends around like 1, 2. So then I get back to the hotel and they're all antsy. They want to go do stuff. I'm like, let's go. So we go to the nearby mall, walk around. Lovely mall. Really big mall, like huge. We went for a big walk there and we're like, okay, what do we do? Well, there is a children's museum in the city we're at. And it's like a Please Touch styled museum. It's just for kids. Obviously anybody can go, but it's aimed at young children, and there's activities, there's toys, there's games. We're like, let's do it. We get there, and the first hour is wonderful. They are having the time of their lives. They're running thing to thing. It's hard to keep up with them. They're running away from us a couple times, you know, and like they even have sensory rooms for when our kids who, you know, our oldest has autism, our youngest is actively getting evaluated for it. He's just turned 2, so it's kind of hard to tell that young. But when they would get overwhelmed, there were quiet sensory rooms for them to go into and have a calmer experience. And it was wonderful. And then about an hour and 15, hour and a half into our trip of this museum, my youngest is running away from me towards the water exhibit. And he's running full sprint. So I'm like, well, he's going to get wet. He's going to make a mess. He could slip and fall. You know, it's concrete floors. There's water. I'm worried about him. So I'm running full sprint after him. And the water exhibit is a little bit lower because, they want the water to stay there. So there's slight ramps down. He's running down the ramp. I'm running down the ramp. At this point, I'm maybe half a foot behind him, and I go for a bear hug. Like the idea of like run up behind him, bear hug him up, and be like, you're coming with me. And I go down, and he loses his footing, and then I lose my footing. And we're on this downhill concrete ramp. So I go into panic mode, right? Because when you're running, and you're running forward, and you fall forward, and you get those few last death knell steps when you're running, and then it's just 1, 2, 3, fall on your face. I'm in that with a 2-year-old underneath me. I'm 240 pounds. So I'm panic brain. What do I do? I grab him, I hug him to my chest, and I just kind of try to hope my elbows brace most of the impact. Luckily, his head and chest are tucked in me, and my elbows protect that. But my right knee lands square on the back of his leg. So we rush to the hospital, and we find out his femur is broken. Now, he's okay otherwise, and it was a clean break. So they told us he just needs a cast for 4 to 6 weeks. And he's been a trooper since then. He's in this cast and he's playing and happy. I don't want to get too deep into it. This is really personal stuff, but other than that, he's perfectly fine. And like I said, throughout the day, he's a little bored. We're trying our best to give him toys that he can play with while sitting, because the cast he's in, he can't walk. So for about a month, he's going to be unable to walk. So why am I sharing this? The main reason is scheduling, for you guys. The main reason I'm sharing for you guys is scheduling. Some side content might fall off. some streams might not happen. And that's just because right now our main focus is making sure he is happy and entertained. He's growing. He's young enough that the doctor said within a month he should be fully healed. He said like 4 to 6 weeks the cast comes off and his femur's just fine again. It's crazy how well young kids heal. But our main focus right now is making sure he is happy and entertained and safe and comfortable. So that being said, some streams might not happen. Some second channel and third channel stuff might not happen. The main channel stuff, like this podcast, the main theory, that will happen because that puts food on the table. I'm sure you guys have noticed over this past year because it's been a crazy hectic year. But when things get really stressful, the main channel video, the podcast, and the compilations will always remain because those make the most money. And when I am restricted on time, I need to make sure the things that make money still happen so we can eat. Right. So that's the thing where like, no matter what, those are happening. But, the second channel stuff, which makes negative money, that's probably going to fall off because I just don't have time for it. We'll see. So just letting you guys know, everyone's relatively okay now. He's relatively okay besides the big problem, but the schedule is going to be very tight for the next month and a half. That being said, I kept teasing that I'd do a timeline video this December. That's just straight up not happening. It requires so much time and effort that I currently just don't have. And I want to make sure the next timeline video I make is the strongest one I can possibly make. And I cannot devote the time that video requires right now. So it's just not going to happen. We'll shoot for next December. We'll see. We will see. That being said, Five Nights at Freddy's, right? For anyone who skipped the chapter, I'm going to be busy the next month. Anyway, Five Nights at Freddy's. I didn't have a lot I wanted to bring up myself. The main thing is Chica's secret party. So for those who know, you know what the next 10 minutes is going to be. So the Ultimate Guidebook 2.0 is coming out, I want to say in a week and a half. But people who got the early copies of it or people who got access to it early have reported that there are 4 pages in this Ultimate Guide. But the claims are that there are 4 pages of the book dedicated to this game called Chica's Secret Party, essentially. And it was supposedly, according to these pages, a browser-based pixel art game that was accessible on scottgames.com, but nobody ever found it. And, you know, this is like everyone keeps talking about, like, oh, it had so much lore in it, and it solved what was in the box, and it was so much stuff, and everybody missed it. But, like, no, I don't think that's true. So the main question I have, and, you know, maybe I'm not as tuned into exactly what is going on with the book. As far as I'm aware, only like 2 people actually got their hands on it. I could be wrong, but my first thought was, hey, this just isn't real. This is just a Talbert file situation again, where somebody's claiming they have something that doesn't exist. But I've heard a lot of people that keep saying that, oh, so-and-so, this person has it, and this person has it, and this, and it's all in there. So if the pages are real, because my first thought was, that's not real. My second thought is, if the pages are real, there's 3 options, right? Either, and this is, I think, the least likely option, this is like an AI slot book, and this is a result of that, where it just made something up. I think that's the least likely option for 2 reasons. One, the entire book would show signs of it. I think it would be I'm very skeptical that someone could create a FNAF guidebook with some AI algorithm and like only 4 pages were severely messed up and not the entire book. Because as I've always said, large language models do very minor tasks pretty poorly, and they ruin the planet by doing it. But more than that, you know, Scott has been very clear that he fucking hates AI, you know? So I would sincerely doubt that he would sign off on something if he knew that it was created by that. The second option, which I think is also unlikely, but is possible, is it's just a really bad user error. Now, the FNAF books, guidebooks, have always been, like, consistently really inaccurate. But there's been more of a benefit of the doubt, because previously, when a FNAF guidebook is inaccurate, it's in a minor detail. Like, it'll mention that Balloon Boy was first in FNAF. It'll mention that, like, Balloon Boy first appeared in Sister Location or something. You know, it's like a weird, like, minor details that are incorrect. And then you look at the whole and you're like, man, this thing needed more corrections, but whatever. The idea that not only are there 4 pages worth of a game that never existed, but there are images that have been created for these pages makes me really double down on, like, that's not just an accident if that's here. Because, like, one of the images is literally the Midnight Motorist background with a weird pixel art Chica on top of it. So, like, I don't see that being an accident. That is something that has been created. So then we get to the third option, which is Scott just wanted to troll people. You know, I don't know, because it's one of those things where, like, Scott has always been known to be a massive troll. He always, his entire career, likes to mess with the fans, and it's a really fun interaction that constantly happens. This is 4 pages worth. If he looks at these books at all, he would have seen this. So either he doesn't look at the books at all, which is possible, or he thought this would be really funny to just make something up. And part of that is that there's another option, which is that it's just true, and that there was this mini game on Scott Games that nobody ever found. But I don't think that's true either, because, like, people tore those sites from top to bottom through the source code and everything else. And you think if there was a mini game that was so chock full of the answers we've been craving for, that Scott would not have dangled that shit over our heads that we never solved it? Especially for the fact that it supposedly solves what's in the box or tells us. I mean, Scott was in an interview not a year ago, and he was like, yeah, you know, I put something in the box, but it's too far now, and it's not relevant anymore. There's no real way to bring it up, and it's just not worth it. You know, it's essentially like a middling answer. You think if there was a minigame that told us what was in the box and Scott made it and we never found it, that motherfucker wouldn't be like, oh, I solved it. You just haven't found it yet. Of course he would. In fact, I have half a mind that that's the whole reason this troll exists in the first place. That he wants to drive us a little crazy with the idea that, yeah, he actually did solve the box and it's our fault we didn't find it. That sounds exactly like something Scott would do. So I really hesitate to think that if this is in the guidebook, which I haven't seen with my own eyes, so I don't know. I really hesitate to think that this is anything but on purpose. That being said, hey guys, hey FNAF community, can we fucking chill like a little bit? Somebody made a website, I believe it was for a Game Jolt upcoming game, that was essentially like Chica's secretparty.com or some shit like that. And it was like really well done, really cool. And a lot of people immediately believed it to be 100% true and 100% from Scott Cawthon and went sprinting to the heavens with it. So it's not. It was for a fan game. And hey guys, how about we take a breath? Talbot Files was like a year ago. Are we really just believing shit we see on the internet immediately now? Still? I don't know. And to the people who were rude to the creator of that site, or worse, because apparently that creator of that site is already getting threatened over it, what the hell is wrong with you? Period. Like, just point blank period. Even like, dude, even if you didn't send fucking death threats or whatever was sent to that creator, just being mean at all to the creator, what the hell's wrong with you? Did he ever go around saying this is an official thing from Scott? No! He made a fucking website. And then half of y'all ran with it saying it was real. I don't know. This is why I don't cover stuff like this immediately. A lot of people were telling me to make a full video on this, the stuff that was coming out about this. And it's like, well, we don't even know what's real yet. When the guidebook comes out, I'll look at it with my own eyes, and if there's something worth talking about, I'll talk about it. But until then, it's not even fucking real. I haven't seen it yet. I'm not going to assume it's real. And if it is real, when I see it with my own eyes and I have something to add to the conversation, I will talk about it. But oh my God, Twitter was did I say almost said unsufferable? Is it insufferable? It's insufferable. Unsufferable? Insufferable. Twitter was insufferable this past weekend. You know, Twitter is a hellscape that I wish I could leave, but I never can. But it was especially rough this past week. So, hey, lock the fuck in. Cool. Let's do questions, shall we? It's been a weird podcast so far. If you have your questions you want to answer the podcast, feel free to send them into Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast at gmail.com. That's in the description to copy and paste. Go to this pane to type down. Our first question comes from Mocha, they, them. I've been thinking for a while. Will Scott make a new book series? If so, what's it about? Each location was in a book series except MCM, if you don't count Tales from the Pizzaplex. MCM was never properly mentioned in a book series, except for like 2 stories in non-canon MCM. So that made me think that the next main novel short story series will be about MCM. Scott could do the same with the Tales books, but I feel like the MCM book series will be about the experiences of ex-employees, because MCM didn't really have kids and parents roaming around, because it was a factory. Plus, it could explain more about MCM that we don't know. Thank you for your question, Mocha. It's an interesting concept, the idea of an MCM, so Murray's Costume Manor book series. And I think you are right to point out that like Murray's Costume Manor proper was not in any book. Because like you mentioned, we have the story The Mimic from Tales of the Pizzaplex, which is like, it's Edwin Murray, it's creating the Mimic, but it's so different than what we see in the games. They're basically separate. Because in the book, this is not even a proper establishment. It is just Edwin Murray building stuff in an abandoned factory for Fazbear. And that's it. You know, so in the games when we have Murray's Costume Manor and it's this whole company with employees and, you know, his wife worked there and all this stuff, like that's so very different than what we see in the book. So I think you're fair to say that like MCM was not in any of the books. With that being said, I bring up this question not only for could it be MCM, which I think it very well could, but part of the reason why I bring up this question is it's a very interesting one. Because we're at a very interesting point in Five Nights at Freddy's. Nothing's coming out. Like, okay, so to be clear, we got a game earlier this year, a big meaty game earlier this year, and we're getting a movie in like 2 weeks. So like, there is stuff. But I think us FNAF fans are a little spoiled. I'm a little spoiled here because Five Nights at Freddy's for up until this past couple of years, for the most part, something was always coming out. In the early days, there was a game every year, except for the sister location of FNAF 6 drought, which hurt very badly. But since Help Wanted, at least, we either had a game every year or some kind of small thing every year, or at least during that stretch, we had Tales from the Pizzaplex, which, not every fan likes the books, but it's something to get hyped about. It's something to give us more information about this world that we're playing in. It's something. And we were getting multiple Tales books a year for years. And now that the series is over, we had the Choose Your Own Adventure interactive novels. We had VIP, which was given out for free for the anniversary. It was a shorter one. We had The Week Before, which is still, I think, the best FNAF book ever written. We had Return to the Pit, which was buck wild. And we had Escape the Pizzaplex, which was kind of boring. And that's it. That's it. I was kind of hoping we'd get a lot more interactive novels. I think they're really good. I think they're really fun. I think they give us a lot of lore to talk about. But we haven't. So now that we're not getting the interactive novels and Tales from the Pizzaplex is over, what's coming out? There was a Tales graphic novel that was slated to come out. That's been, I believe, canceled or shelved, which stinks. But what's coming out? There's really nothing. There's a reason why all the upcoming FNAF game theories I've been doing are on tweets from Leon Riskin. What the hell else am I going to talk about? Now, for us theory channels, that just means it's time to look back at old games and try to rediscover stuff we haven't thought about or look at old theories. So, on the theory side, there's stuff to talk about. But as far as, the hype of the series itself, it feels a little stalematey. Not to mention, the movie comes out in 2 weeks, and the movie's going to be really good. Everything I've heard from this movie is really positive. I'm super excited for the movie. I'm going to talk about the movie on the stream, on the channel probably. I'll do another Easter egg video if I can, but, I'm excited for this movie. A lot of people are excited for this movie. But a semi-problem with the FNAF movies is that because they're so separate from, the games and the books, it's not the same as, something tangible that's immediately available to the community. And I think part of that is that it's not shareable. Right, it's a movie. With the books, we can talk about it in communities. With the games, you can watch a Let's Play. The movie, you have to go and watch it. And because of that, the fan base has a hard time eating that up. So it is a weird time in Five Nights at Freddy's that there's just not a lot happening that the fan base is excited to talk about together. I feel like the next game is creeping over the horizon soon with all the huge amount of teasers that Leon Riskin has been throwing out there. And just the fact that, the last mainline entry was in June. It's been 5 months since we've had any word. Do I think that means we should get a game every year? I don't know. I don't think that's feasible, especially if we want games to be well made. And I've always been the mantra of, I want games to cost more, be shorter, made by more people with worse graphics, and I'm not kidding. And the whole mantra behind that being game studios are overworked as it is. I'm never going to be the guy to say oh, this shit needs to come out now. No, I'm not going to say that. But I think there is something to be said about, in the indie horror space, there's a timeline for these things. And the longer something takes without any word, the more people start to get a little antsy. So, do I want a game in the next 2 months? I don't think so. Not really. I mean, I'd love one if they made it, but I would want to make sure they're taking their time with it. I do think, hopefully, we get a teaser for a game within the next 2 months. I think that's fair to ask, because a teaser doesn't even necessarily mean it's coming out soon. A teaser could be for a game that comes out in 2020. If we get a teaser within the next 3 months, I think it's very fair that that game comes out in 2027. And I think that's a fair timeline. 2 years for an indie horror game for a team like Steel Wool, I think is very feasible. So I'm hoping that we get something meaty to chew on sooner than later. If it's this Ruin 2 that Leon Riskin keeps kind of hinting at, that's awesome. And that means it'll be shorter, which means we can get it sooner. Is it a Secret of the Mimic DLC? Maybe. Is it, Is it literally it's a small standalone? Maybe. But it's this idea of getting something tangible. And if it is shorter, like I said, it can come out sooner. Maybe that could come out in the spring. I don't know. That'd be a good year timeline. I think that's pretty fair. And we'd get a teaser for it pretty damn soon. But I also think there is a mind of not wanting to overshadow the movie. Wanting to make sure that there's no books or games coming out at the same time. Because, frankly, like, put it this way. If Secret of the Mimic came out the same day as the FNAF 2 movie, ain't nobody talking about the FNAF 2 movie. This is straight up. If Secret of the Mimic and the FNAF movie 2 came out on the same day, ain't nobody talking about FNAF movie 2. They're gonna be like, oh my god, did you guys see the Secret of the Mimic gameplay? Hell yeah, brother. Hell yeah, brother. And then 2 weeks later, we go, oh, fuck, the FNAF movie 2 came out. And that's just true. And I think it's just because, like I said, in internet fandoms, things that are shareable take off much better. And a movie is inherently not shareable. That's the whole point. You gotta go experience it. So it tends to not be eaten and shared up with the community as much as like a game release would be. And we creators see that too. When I look at my metrics, far and away, every single time without fail, the worst performing videos I put out are on the FNAF movies. And I don't think it's that people don't care about the movies. Everyone I talk to who's in this fandom loves the movie. Can't wait for the second movie. We're all really excited about it. But it's not that shareable. So people just don't really care about like theories about it. It is also such a separate universe. And that's fair, So let me just say, one, there's a reason I have very little videos on the second movie. I've got one coming out this week, and I'll probably do the Easter egg one, and that's it. Think about how many videos I release on a new FNAF game compared to each movie. So that's just like how you're gonna, that think about that. That's your good way of looking at it. How did we get here on a question about the books? I don't know. It's a podcast. But that being said, I think we are due for something. So if it's a new book series, hell yeah. If it's a teaser for a new game, hell yeah. We're in this weird spot where we're just kind of waiting. It feels like we're that kid in The Incredibles. We're like, what are you waiting for, kid? I don't know. Something amazing, I guess. We're all kind of just like, what's next? But yeah, Mocha, thank you for your question. Hopefully, in a roundabout way, I answered your question. And we'll move on to the next one. Next one coming from Arch, they, them. This is definitely more of a thought experiment than likely. But what if the more pink than purple guy from that one FNAF 2 minigame is meant to be a different guy? That guy being Michael. I think it would undercut his whole sister location plot, but I offer you this in case you get any interesting thoughts out of it. I appreciate the question, and I appreciate your phrasing it like, hey, this probably isn't likely, but it could be a fun thought experiment. And hell yeah. So, could Pink Guy be Michael Afton? Well, we nearly know for certain that Michael Afton goes to the FNAF 2 location. The thinking being he's Fritz Smith, the guy who shows up and gets fired on the same day. And if he's the more pink than purple guy, that would make him the Foxy Go 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 sprite. Which is interesting for a couple reasons. One, Foxy Go 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 seemingly isn't at the FNAF 2 location because there isn't really a Pirate's Cove there. So this would imply that Michael Afton was actually at, assuming these are happening chronologically, it would have to be the FNAF 1, the original FNAF location before FNAF 2. Which Michael was there for, but he'd be a bit younger, would he not? This would be like this would be the guy we see in the Bite of 83 minigame. It would be around that time. He'd still be around that age. So would he be tall enough to be Pink Eye is already a question mark. But if we were to assume that these minigames are not chronological and they could be showing future events, would this then be FNAF 1? Well, that doesn't make sense because 5 kids didn't die at FNAF 1. They died at the original Freddy's. So yeah, I don't see a way to square this away. Unless we are to assume that the Pirate's Cove is just for the sake of the game and they're just showing FNAF 2 here. Then okay. This would be implying that Michael Afton in some way oversaw the missing child incident which took place at the FNAF 2 location. Huh? Would he? Now, I guess it's also fair that, like, 83, the MCI probably happened in 1985. And if we're to assume that Michael Afton is old enough to be in FNAF 2 location in 1987, then 1985 isn't that much of a stretch, and it's 4 years after 1983. So, like, I guess if we are to just assume, for the sake of the argument, that Michael is old enough to be Pink Guy in the 1985 Foxy Go 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 minigame, I still think the smile gives it away. Because I do think in some way Michael Afton is being used by William Afton to get the things he wants done. The idea of, like, he's abusing Michael to manipulate him and use him as a tool. That's possible. I think that's damn near likely. The problem is still that in that minigame, it's such a bare-bones sprite that every detail is very important. And one of those details is that he's smiling. And I don't see I can see Michael Afton being abused to the point of being willing to help William Afton. I don't see Michael Afton smiling while doing it. You know, the idea that he's this, like, oh, I can't wait to help you kill children. I don't see it. Especially with how he reacts when his brother dies. You know, if when the crying child died, Michael Afton didn't show any remorse or sympathy, then maybe, you know, like father, like son, they're both monsters. But Michael, at best, I've always chalked up to being an unwilling accomplice. And the smile on his face, I think, to me, proves otherwise. So I can't think of a way to argue it, frankly. I really can't think of a way to make Michael Afton the Pink Guy. It just doesn't work. And to lob on the fact that, you know, the colors have always been inconsistent in this series, I think it's just Scott accidentally used the wrong color. Call it a day. It's FNAF 2, you know. But it is a fun thought experiment to, like, reinforce some of the theories we thought. So I appreciate you bringing that up, Arch. Our next one comes from Incompetent Gentleman, him. Help Wanted is FNAF 1 through 4, but there's no FNAF 5 or 6. I still think FNAF 6 is a game in-universe, but sister location is in Help Wanted 2. It doesn't feel like Help Wanted 2 is a VR game, more like a training device of sorts. So maybe there is no in-universe sister location game. What are your thoughts on this? Is it possible? Your question, Incompetent Gentleman. So I would argue Help Wanted 1 gives us all the evidence for FNAF 1 through 6 to be in-universe games, because you're right. Only 1 through 4 are technically, like, games in Help Wanted. But there are things that are in FNAF 5 and 6 that are not public knowledge that appear in Help Wanted, which make it only make sense if 5 and 6 are also games. So what do I mean by that? You know, like, for example, Circus Babies in Help Wanted. I don't think that's evidence for Sister Location being an in-universe game, because Circus Baby was a public character. People know Circus Baby. Her being in a FNAF 4 situation is not evidence that that Sister Location is a game. However, in Vent Repair, we face off against Ennard. Ennard is by no means would be a restaurant character for Circus Baby's Pizza World. He never is in the promotional material we see. He is not in the book version, but Help Wanted onward, he's a recognized character. He's in Help Wanted. He is a standee in Security Breach. To me, that says that if Ennard is a character, Sister Location is a game. Because, you know, this character who theoretically only Michael Afton would have ever seen, because it is an amalgamation of all the Funtime endoskeletons wearing a mask that enters Michael Afton and escapes through the sewers. Only Michael Afton should have ever seen this character, but he's recognizable enough to be in a minigame in Help Wanted and a standee cardboard cutout in the middle of Rockstar Row of Security Breach. I don't think we get that without Sister Location being a game. So that's one. And then for FNAF 6, it's a little bit more loose. But one of the plush Scrap Babies is styled to look pretty identical, but a plushy version. One of the plush Circus Babies is styled to look pretty identical, but a plush version of Scrap Baby. Again, we're talking about recognizable characters here. Scrap Baby is not, or has ever, worked at a restaurant. You know, Scrap Baby was salvaged during FNAF 6. She has a giant claw, scooper-looking thing for a hand. She looks like a freak. She never worked at a restaurant, but if she's a recognizable enough character to have merchandise, then to me that says she has to be a character, which then says she has to be in a game, the game FNAF 6, the one we play in real life, which is an in-universe game. That's my basic logic. Is yes, the games themselves don't specifically appear, but they kind of do. Actually, now that I think about it, Funtime Foxy Auditorium is in Help Wanted, isn't it? It's one of the Dark Rooms levels. So, like, yeah, it does. Shrug. It just does. Shrug. So, yeah, I would think that 5 and 6 are in-universe games as well. Now, again, does this mean that these things didn't happen? No. Help Wanted establishes two things at the same time. Help Wanted establishes that all of the games are in-universe games, but that also Fazbear had them created to directly copy what happened in real life to muddy the waters and make it seem more fantastical and not real. Which, again, I think is just a writer's device to say, hey, these things happened, but they're told by an unreliable narrator, so if we have to make minor adjustments, give us some leeway. I still think that's what they're trying to say with this. And not to mention, in the books, one of the tale stories, a kid mentions Mr. Hippo being from the Pizzeria Simulator game or something, which, that's a pretty direct reference there to Freddy Fazbear Pizzeria Simulator being an in-universe game. But I hope that helped. Thank you for your question, incompetent gentlemen. And our last one comes from Josh, they, them. I've had this theory floating in my mind for a while now. I think the reason why Foxy could be ripped up is because Fritz is trying to get out. In one of the rare posters that can appear in the left hallway, Freddy is ripping himself apart. This theory, I believe, is to be explaining this best is that the souls of the MCI try to escape this way. Since Foxy has a hook, if he attempted the same thing as Freddy, he would probably rip his suit up, like we see in game. Also, as an extra piece of evidence that probably means nothing, is that Foxy's main slash on his chest is in the direction that Foxy's range of motion could easily reach. And as to why Foxy's missing his suit from the knees down, it's probably because he's a runner. It's more speculative, though. Thank you for your question. Yeah, I think it's one of those things where when Foxy was originally designed, was that the plan? I don't think so. One of those things where, like, actually, maybe so. So the points you raise, I don't think have a hard counter example because they're not really like disprovable. The question is, are they likely enough to bother being proved, right? So the idea that like Foxy is ripping himself apart is cool and does stylistically line up, but we don't have any evidence from like to suggest that is what's happening besides, yeah, that kind of makes sense. That being said, I was going to say this is one of those moments where Scott didn't plan it at first, but in post maybe kind of leaned into it. But you're right to point out that in FNAF 1, there is that rare poster of Freddy ripping his head off. So if Freddy trying to rip his head off, we have Bonnie and Chica's heads barely staying on, and we have Foxy being all torn up. Maybe you're onto something. Maybe these spirits are trying to get out of these suits. Now, part of me doubts that only because we see pretty time and time again that once William Afton is like dealt with, they move on pretty quickly. So like it's almost like they could if they wanted to, but they feel either more secure or more protected in them. Kind of the same reason why Give Gifts, Give Life was, hey, you can possess these suits if you would, giving this opportunity to these spirits. But I don't know. It's not definitive in any way. No, I don't know. It's like I said, it's a theory that it sounds really cool. I like the direction it's going. I don't see any hard evidence for why they would need to destroy the suits to get out, or why they would even want to get out. But if you can, then stylistically, I think there's an argument to be made there. Especially because, like, in the week before, we know for a fact they're trying to escape the restaurant. They're trying to leave the restaurant. So why would they not also try to leave the suits? No, I think that's a fair point. I think it's fun to talk about. Thank you for your question. And I've had to record this in like 4 parts because I keep needing to go do stuff because we just got back a couple of days ago. So I have no idea how long this podcast is. I'm going to hope it's long enough. And I'll leave you with if you want your questions answered on this podcast, send them into Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast at the Gmail. Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast at gmail.com. It's in the description, copy and paste because it's a pain to type out. But until next time, as always, you've been watching the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast, where the pizza abilities are endless. We hope to enjoy your future patronage. Bye-bye for now.